It was a tense morning in Washington in May 2025. Donald Trump, in his second term as president, made what would turn out to be the biggest mistake of his political career. During a meeting with advisors at the White House, he expressed growing frustration with Ibrahim Traoré. "This African kid is causing too much trouble," Trump said, banging his fist on the Oval Office table. "First he kicked out our agents. Now other African countries are copying him. We have to do something." Steve Bannon, recently reinstated as a strategic advisor, suggested a direct approach. "Mr. President, why don't you invite him for an interview? Show the world who's really boss." Trump grinned. "Brilliant. I'm going to humiliate him on national television. Show that America will not tolerate disrespect from a little African dictator." The call was made immediately. "Ibrahim, my young friend," Trump said with false friendliness, "how about a live chat on Fox News? Clear up some misunderstandings between our countries." On the other end of the line in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré smiled as he secretly recorded the conversation. "Of course, Mr. President, it will be interesting to discuss America-Africa relations publicly." Trump, confident he would control the narrative, accepted the proposed format, a live debate moderated by Sean Hannity. "It'll be easy," he told Bannon. "I'll show this kid how real politics works." What Trump didn't know was that Ibrahim had spent weeks preparing for this exact moment. Dr. Wedrogo Ibrahim said after hanging up, "Trump has just walked into the perfect trap. Prepare all the documents we've collected on him in the past few months." "President, are you sure? This could cause a diplomatic crisis," his minister warned. "The crisis already exists," Ibrahim replied coolly. "Trump has declared an unofficial war on Africa. Time to show him the consequences." In the days leading up to the televised debate, Trump was ramping up his preparations. With his team, he was confident it would be an easy win over a young, inexperienced African in the Oval Office. He was reviewing attack points with his aides. "I want to expose all his weaknesses," Trump said, studying briefings on Burkina Faso, poverty, military coups. "I will systematically destroy him." Stephen Miller, the architect of Trump's anti-immigration policies, suggested a more sinister tactic. "Mr. President, why don't you question his legitimacy as a leader? Suggest that Africa doesn't produce real leaders." Trump laughed cruelly. "Perfect. I'll show that these African countries are irrelevant on the world stage, that America determines who's a legitimate leader and who's not." Meanwhile, in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim was coordinating a very different kind of preparation with his intelligence team. "Major Sawadogo, are all the files on intercepted communications ready?" he asked. "Yes, sir. We have recordings of 47 conversations where Trump uses extremely offensive language about African leaders," the intelligence chief replied, including a December call where he called all African presidents monkeys in suits. Ibrahim studied the transcripts with a grave expression. "And what about the evidence of destabilization operations? Fully documented. President, Trump personally approved $340 million to overthrow African governments that don't cooperate with American interests." Dr. Wedrogo still hesitated. "President, exposing this will cause a geopolitical earthquake. Trump has been underestimating Africa for a long time," Ibrahim said determinedly. "It's time to teach him what consequences look like." On Fox News, Sean Hannity was preparing to moderate what he believed would be President Trump's epic takedown of an African dictator. "This is going to be fantastic television," he told producers. None of them imagined they were about to witness one of the greatest political humiliations in American history. The evening of May 29, 2025, arrived with anticipation neither side fully understood. In the Fox News studio, Trump adjusted his tie with characteristic confidence, certain it would be a triumphant evening. On the other side of the world, Ibrahim Traoré sat calmly in his office, a briefcase of explosive documents at his side. "Good evening, America," began Sean Hannity. "Tonight, we have a historic showdown between President Trump and President Ibrahim Traoré over the future of America-Africa relations." The screen split to show Trump in the plush Fox studio and Ibrahim in a modest but dignified presidential setting. "President Trump," Hannity began, "many Americans want to know, how do you intend to deal with the growing challenges from African leaders who are questioning American authority?" Trump leaned forward aggressively. "Sean, it's simple. America first means we don't tolerate disrespect from anyone, especially from countries that depend on our aid." Turning to the camera, Trump added with a cruel smile, "Ibrahim, you need to understand that America determines the world. Or countries like yours exist because we allow them to." Ibrahim remained calmly seated. "Interesting perspective, Mr. President. But perhaps we should discuss what you really think about African leaders when you think no one is listening." "What are you talking about?" Trump asked, the first signs of discomfort on his face. "I'm talking about the call you made last December to the President of France," Ibrahim said calmly, "where you referred to African presidents as monkeys in suits who need to be disciplined." The studio went completely silent. Trump paled visibly. That's a lie, really?" Ibrahim asked, smiling for the first time. "Hannity, would your producers like to play the recording I have here?" The panic in Trump's eyes was unmistakable. He knew exactly which conversation Ibrahim was referencing. Sean Hannity looked visibly shaken, realizing the situation had spiraled out of control. True, these are very serious allegations. They are not allegations, Ibrahim interrupted calmly. These are documented facts. Would you like to play the recording now, or would President Trump prefer to explain first? Trump was now visibly sweating, gesturing wildly. Ibrahim, you don't understand the context. I understand perfectly, Ibrahim replied, activating the audio player. This is the conversation of December 15, 2024, at 2:23 p.m., between President Trump and President Macron. Trump's unmistakable voice echoed through the studio. Emmanuel, these Africans are getting very arrogant, especially this kid from Burkina Faso. They are all monkeys in suits who think they're important. We need to show them who's boss. Dead silence filled the studio. Trump tried to deny it. This was taken out of context. Context, Ibrahim asked. What context justifies racist language about democratically elected leaders? In the recording, Trump continued, all of Africa should be recolonized. These countries are zoos run by animals. Hannity tried to cut the feed, but Ibrahim went on. But there's more. This is a call with President Putin, where you discuss the final solution to the African problem. No, Trump shouted, rising from his chair. Turn it off. But it was too late. Trump's voice echoed again. Vladimir, we need to work together to keep these Africans in their place. Maybe some coordinated operations. Fake news, Trump yelled, now completely out of control. Deep fakes, manipulation. Ibrahim remained calmly seated. Mr. President, these recordings have been verified by 3 independent agencies, including the FBI, which confirmed their authenticity. You have just proven to the world that your Africa policy is based not on legitimate American interests, but on pure racial hatred, he said, on white supremacy disguised as geopolitics. Trump was now visibly having a panic attack. On the air, he had entered a full meltdown, his hands shaking as he desperately tried to deny evidence of his own racial hatred. This is a coup, he shouted, pointing at the camera. An intelligence operation to destroy America. Sean Hannity tried to regain control. Let's go to commercial break. There will be no break, Ibrahim said firmly. The world needs to hear everything. He activated another devastating recording. This is a conversation with your generals about Operation African Cleansing, a plan to assassinate African leaders you consider problematic. Trump's voice was clear. I need Ibrahim Traoré gone permanently. Make it look like an accident. Trump was now hyperventilating. Lies, all lies. Mr. President, Ibrahim said calmly. Your own generals recorded these meetings because they were horrified by your orders. 3 of them have already turned over evidence to Congress. Treason, Trump screamed. Deep state conspiracy. Ibrahim flashed documents on the screen. These are orders signed by you authorizing $500 million to neutralize African destabilizing elements. Your own signature. And this, Ibrahim continued inexorably, is a list of 23 African leaders targeted for elimination. My name is at the top. Trump slumped back in his chair, clearly having some kind of mental episode. No, this can't be real. It's very real, Ibrahim said. Just like your words about African racial inferiority in a cabinet meeting. Another recording played. These Africans are genetically inferior. Darwin was right about racial hierarchy. America needs to keep them in check. Hannity was now desperately trying to end the show, but the producers knew they were airing history. President Trump, Ibrahim said, you have just been exposed as a white supremacist who uses presidential power to promote genocide. How do you explain this to the American people? Trump was now mumbling incoherently, clearly in complete psychological breakdown. No one was supposed to know. Secret plans. In his state of total panic, Trump began to confess, unintentionally confirming the authenticity of everything Ibrahim had revealed. You don't understand the pressures I face, he shouted, tears streaming down his face. America is losing control. These Africans are becoming too powerful. Ibrahim watched calmly as Trump self-destructed on live TV. So you're confirming that you planned assassinations of African leaders? I had to protect America, Trump yelled. You're taking our markets. Partnerships with China and Russia. It was an existential threat. Sean Hannity was now in full panic, realizing he had just moderated a confession of war crimes on live television. President, maybe you should stop talking. No, Trump shouted. I need to explain. Ibrahim ruined everything. Decades-long plans destroyed by an African boy. What plans? Ibrahim asked, knowing Trump was now confessing everything. Operation Free Africa, Trump said, completely unhinged. Remove all independent African leaders, recolonize the continent through puppets. It was the only way to keep America great. And how did you plan to do that? Assassinations, coups, civil war, anything necessary. Trump was now openly confessing to planned genocide on national television. Africa should serve America, not compete with us. Ibrahim remained impassive. Mr. President, you just confessed to planned genocide against the African people on world television. It was necessary. Trump mumbled, finally realizing the magnitude of what he had said. America first, whatever the cost. Hannity finally managed to cut the broadcast, but it was too late. Trump had confessed to crimes against humanity live in front of 200 million viewers. Mr. President, Ibrahim said in his final words before the broadcast ended, "You have just shown the world the true face of American white supremacism. Thank you for confirming everything we have always suspected." The broadcast ended with Trump sobbing uncontrollably. In the hours following the devastating broadcast, shockwaves rippled not only across the United States, but around the world. Clips of Trump's confession went viral, translated into dozens of languages. "Trump confesses to planning African genocide," screamed global headlines at the White House. Panic erupted. Vice President J.D. Vance called an emergency cabinet meeting to discuss invoking the 25th Amendment. "The president clearly had a mental breakdown on national television," Vance said. "He confessed to war crimes. He cannot continue in office." The Secretary of Defense tried damage control. "We need to deny everything. Say he had a medical episode. He confessed to planned genocide." The Secretary of State shouted, "How do we deny recordings of his own voice?" In Congress, Democrats immediately began impeachment proceedings. "Trump admitted to planning assassinations of foreign leaders," declared Nancy Pelosi. "This is treason, war crimes, and attempted genocide." Even Republicans began to distance themselves. "I cannot defend someone who plans to assassinate African presidents," said Senator Mitt Romney in world capitals. The reaction was horror and outrage. The United Nations called an emergency session. The International Criminal Court announced an immediate investigation into crimes against humanity. "Trump's confession is prima facie evidence of genocidal intent," the chief prosecutor declared. China and Russia, traditional rivals of the United States, issued a joint statement condemning the supremacist barbarity of the American regime. The European Union suspended all trade agreements with the United States. "We cannot negotiate with a government that plans genocide," said the president of the European Commission. On the streets of America, massive demonstrations demanded Trump's immediate removal. "Genocide out," chanted crowds in Washington. Even traditional Trump supporters were horrified. "This is about more than politics," said a former supporter. "It's about basic humanity." In Ouagadougou, watching the chaos unfold, Ibrahim said, "Trump dug his own grave by underestimating African intelligence and overestimating his ability to hide hatred." 3 days after his televised confession, Trump was completely politically isolated. His entire cabinet had resigned. Congress had initiated impeachment with bipartisan support. The U.S. military refused to follow his orders. "We do not serve genocide," declared the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in a public letter. "We are sworn to defend the Constitution, not white supremacy." Trump, barricaded in the Oval Office with only a few loyal aides, was in a deteriorating mental state. "Ibrahim destroyed me," he muttered repeatedly. "How did this African boy do this?" Steve Bannon tried a last-ditch strategy. "Sir, we can claim that you were under the influence of drugs. No one will believe that after the tapes," said Trump's lawyer, who was also preparing to drop him as a client. "You confessed to planned genocide on national television." Meanwhile, Ibrahim was being hailed as a world hero. The president of France called him personally. "President Traoré, you saved the lives of millions of Africans by exposing these monstrous plans." Pope Francis issued a special statement. President Traoré demonstrated extraordinary moral courage in exposing hatred that threatened all of humanity. Universities around the world were offering him honorary doctorates. The Nobel Peace Prize was under consideration. "He didn't just defend Africa," said a committee member. "He defended civilization against barbarism." In the U.S. Senate, the impeachment vote was unanimous, 100-0. "Trump's confessed crimes are indefensible," said the Republican leader. "Treason, attempted genocide, conspiracy against humanity." Trump tried to make a final speech on TV, but the networks refused to broadcast it. "We will not give a platform to an avowed supremacist," said CNN's president. When federal marshals arrived at the White House with an arrest warrant for war crimes, Trump was still muttering, "Ibrahim, how did he know everything?" The answer was simple. Ibrahim had overprepared for a serious enemy, while Trump had underestimated him, thinking racial hatred could hide incompetence. 6 months later, Donald Trump sat in the dock at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, facing formal charges of crimes against humanity and conspiracy to commit genocide. Ibrahim Traoré was the prosecution's star witness. "Honorable judges," Ibrahim said in his testimony, "I present evidence of a systematic plan to eliminate independent African leadership and recolonize the continent through violence." The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings, signed documents, bank transfers for assassination operations, testimony from horrified American military officers. The defendant publicly confessed to genocidal intent. The prosecutor stated, "Rarely do we have such clear evidence of mens rea for crimes of this magnitude." Trump, represented by a trial lawyer, pleaded temporary insanity. "My client was under extreme stress. Stress does not justify planning genocide." The presiding judge responded, "The evidence shows years of conspiracy, not impulsive action." During the trial, horrific details emerged. Trump had approved $2 billion for Operation Free Africa, a plan to assassinate 47 African leaders in 18 months. His target list included elected presidents, human rights activists, and intellectuals. The former CIA director testified, "This was a planned genocide of African elites." Ibrahim testified about the psychological toll. "Finding out that a superpower president was planning your assassination is traumatic, but worse is knowing he viewed all Africans as subhuman." The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. The judge, during sentencing, said, "The defendant demonstrated total contempt for human dignity. His crimes represent a return to the genocidal mindset the world swore never to allow again." In Washington, crowds cheered in the streets. "Justice has been done." Protesters chanted, "Genocide in jail." In Africa, Ibrahim was welcomed as a continental savior. "He protected us from a modern-day Holocaust," said the chairman of the African Union. Trump, led away in handcuffs, was still muttering Ibrahim. How did he do it? 2 years after toppling Trump, Ibrahim Traoré had become a transformational figure in global politics. The United States under new leadership formally apologized to Africa and paid $50 billion in reparations for the genocidal conspiracy. Ibrahim addressed a special session of the United Nations General Assembly on genocide prevention in the 21st century. 2 years ago, I exposed plans for genocide against Africa, he told the packed auditorium. Today, we see that eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. Applause echoed for minutes. Delegates from 193 nations rose to their feet, honoring a man who had saved millions. Trump represented a colonial mentality that never fully died. Ibrahim continued. He believed Africa existed to serve the West, that Africans were disposable subjects. His downfall proves that the era of impunity is over. Leaders who plot genocide will face justice no matter how powerful they believe they are. The UN unanimously passed the Traore Protocol, a global surveillance system to detect genocidal planning by any government. "We will never again allow racial hatred to become state policy," declared the UN Secretary General. Ibrahim had been elected president of the African Union, uniting the continent like never before. "Trump inadvertently gave us a gift," he said in an interview. "He showed us we needed to be united to survive." Africa was now thriving. The continent's GDP was growing at 15% annually. Massive investments in education, health, and technology were transforming lives. "The Traore effect has triggered an African renaissance," one economist observed. In a maximum prison, Trump languishes, still obsessed with the man who destroyed him. How did he know? He repeatedly asked guards. The answer remained the same. Ibrahim had prepared for war, while Trump had toyed with hatred. One studied his enemy, the other underestimated him through racism. History would remember Ibrahim Traoré as the man who saved an entire continent, who proved that intelligence defeats hatred, that preparation defeats arrogance, and that Africa will never again bow to anyone.